Well, good to be with you all again. You know, in this series I have been doing over the last couple of sessions, I've been really bringing pieces of the presentations I've been doing with SALT last year and this year, and in fact in the midst of a book that I'm writing on the subject of what I call the rules of rebellion. But you know something, some things had happened just even last week, and then when you think about the things that happened last week as God working through my life, and then you look at the subject of wake, and particularly on this one, an extravagant hope within, but both of them, the subcontext between wake are really pertinent, and I thought, you know, I'm going to just press pause on another segment or another rule of the rebellion, and I'm just going to share something that happened to me last week that I shared with our SALT staff yesterday, and we're recording this on a Tuesday, so that was at our Monday morning meeting. You know, when I was a young man, a teenager, getting ready to start college, I fell away from God. And I fell away because I didn't capture the extravagant hope of now. I understood the hope of the hereafter. I understood the hope of heaven. But I just wasn't hanging with people that were experiencing this vibrant life with God right now. And so when I think about, and so I fell away, and it would be a decade before I would return. And of course, it required my having self-destructed pretty much and kind of run out of options. It's like no plan was working for me. And I thought, well, you know, hey, how about maybe I ought to try Jesus? And that was a good call. That was maybe my first good call for a while. But as I think about this concept of awake and extravagant hope within, as I was coming over here today, I was thinking about that phrase, extravagant hope, comes from a guy who wrote a book called The True Believer, which is a book about the nature of movements. Eric Hoffer was his name. He's no longer living. And he was talking about the nature of movement and how to sustain one when he made this comment. And he was talking about you can't sustain a movement by simply fomenting unhappiness or just giving the 10 basic rules of why it'd be a good idea to have a movement, but rather you have to kindle and fan an extravagant hope within the hearts of others. And I think that as I contemplate that when I was a kid, and I just didn't see the present vibrance, or let's put it this way, I wasn't around folks, I wasn't hanging out with folks that were having this. It's not that it wasn't existing, it's that I wasn't seeing it. And so as I have gone on through life, and as we started SALT a dozen years ago, I've watched hundreds of men and women awake. In fact, we call it this awakening, in which they come to this moment of just this profound sense of who God is and who He says they are, and the purposefulness in their lives. But there's a second thing. There's a second piece to this that is really significant, because once you awaken to this, so then what does it look like? And of course, we've talked for years about the importance of pursuing this ever deepening intimacy, because as you pursue Him, as it says in Hebrews 11:6, He is a rewarder. He rewards us. And so what I wanted to really talk about today was what I would say is the walk in the Spirit. It's this incredible value add that I wish I had understood as a kid. And even for years, even after becoming a committed Christian then in my late 20s and walking with God, I even then didn't realize there was an even more profound walk with God, in which you would hear His voice. I didn't realize how aggressively He is in the weeds of our lives. Well, over time, as I was starting to meet people that I knew that weren't crazy, that I knew that loved God, that these were incredible men and women, and I saw there was a side to them that was more than what even I was experiencing as a believer. And I wanted to understand that more. And so I just started asking for these things. And that was one of the great moments, or great ahas for me, was that all you got to do is ask Him, and He'll start doing these things and start exposing you things. So I wanted to give you a slice of what that looks like. What does it look like to walk in the Spirit when you've opened yourself up to God's subtle impressions and His leading and His orchestration and the like in another way? Well, one thing that I've done for years, and that is to go off on spiritual retreats. But this summer, and actually for a couple of years now, I haven't done that. I used to try to do that maybe once a quarter, and where that would just be a function of just getting away with the Lord. I might go down to, if you know Mark Nuttall, I might go down to his place back when he had a place down in southern Oklahoma, or I might go someplace else. But I would step away. But I hadn't done that for a while, and so as for about the last month, as I have been writing, I've really been spending time trying to put on paper this book, The Rules of Rebellion. But boy, I tell you what, I have for probably, so it's mid-August right now, so probably from early July up until a week ago, it was like wading through concrete. It was just not coming. I would clear my schedule more, but something was just not clicking with me, and I couldn't figure out what the deal was, and it was getting very frustrating. So on a Friday, actually 10 days ago, Friday. So on Friday, my wife Lori and I have a morning kind of a routine, and that is when we're bidding one another goodbye. We'll embrace and we'll just pray for one another's day and then go. Well, Lori knew that I had been writing and that I was slated. I was going to be home that day. I was going to try again to get some movement going on this. And as she was praying for me and I was embracing her, as she prayed for my ability to write, I just felt this stirring and sadness, and I actually started getting weepy. And this thought flashed across my head: I feel so much pressure to get this right. And I pulled away from Lori, and she looked at my face, and she said, "What's wrong?" And that's when I told her about this. And at that moment, and you all know what this is like. You've had moments like this when you're just flailing away and you're trying to get something done, whatever it might be, in whatever realm or context that you work in whatever sphere of influence you deal. But you've had the same thing in which you just seem to be constantly just not. You're just not. It's not working. And so Lori and I, from our experience, both knew what that meant. I knew, for one thing, that when I'm thinking it's my responsibility to get something right, then that is faulty thinking. And we both knew that it was time for me to break away. We knew from that the Lord was calling me to get away with Him, to unplug, to just stop my flailing about and just go and be away with Him. And so I cleared my calendar and I asked the Lord. I knew where I wanted to go. And so this is what I'm telling you now are these little things that I have come to recognize as common in how the Lord does these things. So the first thing I knew that, well, I want to get away. I need to get away, and I need to figure out where that's going to be. And I knew I didn't want to stay in hot, muggy Oklahoma, so I wanted to go someplace in the mountains over maybe New Mexico or Colorado, somewhere where the humidity was good and the temperature was better and all of that. And so but I knew that I had a day, the busy afternoon ahead of me, and I couldn't spend all day trying to call around, trying to find something or going online. And so I went online. Well, first of all, I did this. I said, Lord, please make this easy for me, because wherever it is, I need to leave now. I can't, or I need to leave this weekend. I can't set this off for 2 or 3 weeks or whenever I can get a booking. Make it easy. Well, and so in fact, he did. The first thing that I see, I Google Pecos cabin rental, riverfront rentals. So, I'm getting pretty picky. Oh no, I go Northern New Mexico riverfront cabin rentals. And it gives me a list. And so the first one I go to, I send an email to, hey, you got any openings? And the response comes back, no, we're full up. Yet within the hour, I get a call, and they had an amazing, in this busy season, they had an amazing cancellation right then. And so I'm now set. But a couple of other things happened as well. Before I left that day, I had a phone call. I was supposed to get together with a friend of mine named Tim. And Tim is a very deep, spiritually attuned follower of Jesus. And Tim had told me earlier in the week that he wanted to chat with me that week, and we had agreed, well, hey, how about Friday afternoon? And so we're having this conversation. And I tell him, Tim, I realize I need to get away. And Tim shares with me, he says, I know you need to get away because what I wanted to talk to you about was what's going on with you? What is it? What's wrong? Well, I didn't even know that I was even giving that away. You all probably don't know when you're giving it away, but the people that love you and care about you are maybe more tuned into you are. But here's what he shared with me, and he said, this is what I need you to understand and to take with you, because I think this is a message for you, and it wasn't just for me. Some weeks before this, Tim had a vision, that God had given him a vision. Now, I've had a couple of those in my life. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Maybe right now you're going, what? Or does he do this? Well, yes. And so Tim has this vision, and Jesus meets him in heaven. And it's the new heaven and new earth. And you see these walls in Jerusalem, and it's the new Jerusalem. And Jesus is standing there, and he's standing there with a handful of men that Tim doesn't know who they are. And Tim is feeling at that moment that this sense of, how do I accomplish what I should be accomplishing? It was like a moment that you and I all feeling inadequate to the moment or to what's before us to accomplish. And so he's bringing that to the Lord. And the Lord introduces him to one of the people, and the guy, he says, well, this is Paul, the Apostle Paul, and Paul says something to Tim in that moment that is really significant. He says, Tim, we were just like you. Because you look at a guy like Paul and you think, oh my gosh, this is the writer of all these incredible letters. This is of so much of the New Testament. This is the author of it, and yet he has just told me that he and these other guys, and he didn't know who they were, probably other apostles, but they're just like me. And Tim sees all of this golden mist that's flowing around, flowing through the walls, flowing through these men, and it's just like coming right through them. And they let him know that this is the grace of God This golden mist, this is the grace of God flowing through us because we are not adequate. It's the grace of God through us. And Tim then tells me, he says, Wes, you need to take that to heart. One of the things that you're supposed to take away is it's about the grace of God. It's not about you. And I went, wow, okay, well, thank you. I was having to ponder that. I mean, that was a pretty heavy comment right then. And one other thing before I left town. But here's the deal. One thing to keep it, thinking about the different things that God orchestrates, the people, the situations, all of the orchestration of the different pieces as he takes us on a journey, because that's what this is. This is a walk. The whole part of our life is about this awakening, ongoing walk with him as he kindles and fans an extravagant hope within our own hearts and provides us as we pursue him. He does this. And so typically, as always has been my activity on a retreat, before I go, I always look at my bookshelf. Because I've learned that what God has done in those instances is I'll go along my bookshelves. He will typically have some title pop for me, something that will just that the Spirit within me will look at, and it's something that the Lord is wanting me to look at while I'm away. Well, I look up and down this thing, and I'm not seeing anything. There's nothing that pops. And so I don't know what it is I'm supposed to do, except that he gives me an impression that he wants me to re-listen to an audiobook that I'd listened several years earlier. And the book was this. It's called God's Smuggler. It's by a guy named Brother Andrew. Maybe you've listened to it before or read it before, but it's a phenomenal book. And it's a story of a man who's a missionary smuggling Bibles behind the Iron Curtain. He's a former Dutch commando, gets saved. One thing leads to another, and it's just I just remember it as having been a remarkable read. And for some reason, the Lord wants me to read it again. Okay. And so I've learned to just pay attention to the promptings and do what you're told. And if you'll do that, and that's a part of how you start recognizing his voice. You start acting upon the promptings, and that starts sifting out, and then you start recognizing those subtle promptings. Is that just the pizza you ate, the indigestion that you're feeling, or is that the Lord talking to you? And so I begin the weekend, and I'm listening to the book, and I also know, since Tim has talked to me about grace, I download Andy Stanley's book, The Grace of God. And so I'm now reading these materials and listening to the tape. And here's the deal. Here's the big takeaway. I'm walking down this old campground that I had camped in 20 plus years earlier. And I'm contemplating the story of this guy, Brother Andrew, and the remarkable story of his life. All the different things and so many aspects of it. You see this trusting walk with the Holy Spirit. I mean, it was so fascinating how the missionaries were trained. And this is in the 1950s. He goes to a missionary training facility in Glasgow, Scotland. And a part of their training is simply how to trust God, and they do that by giving the people a £1 note, sending them out on mission for a week, telling them they can't ask anybody for money, anybody but God, can't tell anybody what they need, and then when they and just watch and learn how God provides for you, and so they and then when you get back, you pay the £1 note back. Because the Lord will have provided that as well. And that is exactly the sort of thing that happened. And as I watched that and I saw that, I saw, and then I would read about how he would struggle. He makes a comment at one point in time because he was wanting to print Russian Bibles, and it was going to be a very expensive affair, and he was downtrodden on that. He was downcast because of that. And one of his associates kind of jumps on him and said, "What you're sit there immobilized because of a little thing like money?" And he realized they were right. He realized that he could trust God. And this is what he said. I realized that they were right. I was willing to trust God for toothpaste and shaving cream, but not for bigger amounts of money. And indeed, God did provide that.